How y'all doing?
Do well yourself?
It's another wonderful day in paradise. All right, it is 1 o'clock here. It is 4 o'clock for you guys on the West Coast, and for I believe one of us, it is 7 o'clock. All right,
How's it
all
going?
right, guys. Yeah, no, it's been wonderful. It's been a great event so far. I know you guys all have busy days. I want to first start off by saying thank you guys for showing up today, for being willing to do this panel. You guys are all incredible people, and I know that the value you guys are going to be providing to these students is going to be an absolute boon. So, that being said, so welcome everyone to the CEOs panel, the Starting Up a Startup Advice for Aspiring CEOs and Startup Owners. I'm going to be your panel moderator. My name is Nick. I'm a student at the University of Hawaii at West Oahu. Yes, the name is not just a moniker. I actually live and work in Hawaii. On this panel today, we have Jeremy Del Rosa, the current CEO and founder of Leyline, a nonprofit that believes in the idealism of gaming for good. We have David Strasnoy here, the CEO. Well, actually, he walked away for a hot minute, so actually, I'll save the introduction for when he comes back. We have John Radoff, the CEO of Beamable. No, you're good, dude. You're good. We have the CEO for Beamable. Dude, that is one incredible having you here. And then we have Milo here, the current CEO and founder of 8-Bit Esports. That was a club that used to be a club, but is now a professional amateur organization. And then last but not least, since he's back here, David Strasnoy, my friend, the current CEO of Betty Games. How was that for an introduction?
That is fantastic. Thank you.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it sets the stage for the conversation we're going to have today. So you guys have already gotten the panel agenda, but just real quickly for all of our viewers. So today we're going to be going over a couple things. We're going to be talking about the most essential, tangible thing that you probably need on your journey to starting up a startup, talking about a little bit about how motivation kind of works, talking about how pivots potentially also kind of work, talking about innovation, because innovation in our industry is very much essential to everything that we kind of do here in the space. And then last but not least, final pieces of advice for people that are watching, or to our students that are watching this here today, in addition to a special question for John Radoff. That being said, so let's get into it. So to start off, so I kind of introduced you guys and your guys' companies. Give me your elevator pitch. What is, give me your current summary for what your guys' company does. Anyone can go first.
You want me to start?
Yeah, definitely.
So my name's John Radoff. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Beamable. There's a vast creator economy that's coming, and it's millions of people that want to create games, and they need the tools to do it really effectively. But more importantly, I think build a business around it, be able to make a living around it. And that's what we do. We provide the tools and the platform to help you do that by bringing monetization, live events, content management, continuously updating your game, providing a social ecosystem around it. That's what we do. We want to allow millions of people to really make a living from game making.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I could go ahead and speak, Nick. So hi everybody. I'm Jeremy. It's great to meet you. So with Leyline, we're a social impact organization, not for profit, open source, and open knowledge. And ultimately, we're trying to embody a number of things, but achieving this economy of altruism. So essentially, we want to be able to let users do good, get NFTs, and get paid. As simple as that. So we're trying to basically create this loyalty program for doing good deeds in the real world. And what we do is partner with all these nonprofits to validate different volunteer activities like donating blood or computing power to research and helping to accelerate cures for cancer and COVID and all sorts of interesting diseases. So we're basically pretty heavy in a blockchain space, and building off NFTs that are kind of exploding right now, and using that as a delivery mechanism to just basically give passive income to people all over the world. So the hope is we're going to make a dent on eradicating poverty and start to carve a path towards solving climate crisis. That's why we're here.
I can go next. I'm David Strashnoy. I'm the CEO of Betty Games. And our goal basically is to help gamer communities, especially chat-based communities in applications like Discord, to better monetize their users through automated, easy-to-use tournaments that are basically no hassle, that they can basically invite our bot called Betty to basically manage the whole thing at a click of a few buttons. So it essentially solves the problem of the difficulty of managing and running tournaments, which can take a very long time, and really just cut what usually takes hours or days to minutes in order to essentially enlarge the universe or the population of people who want to do this for their communities, again, to engage their communities and to monetize for themselves.
And Milo, why don't you go next, and then I'll introduce Richard.
Gotcha. So my name is Milo Ocampo. I am the founder and CEO of 8-Bit Esports. And what we did was essentially we created a pipeline for esports talent development to help gamers and creators gain real-world experience and to equip them with the skills necessary to break into the industry by acting as the bridge between grassroots esports and those looking to have a presence within the industry. Right now, we have a major focus in Vegas because that's where we're based off of. That's where our roots are. And right now, it seems like everyone on every level is trying to turn Vegas into this gigantic esports hub. So they're kind of looking right now to 8-Bit to foster the grassroots talent and take, our university and our high schoolers to being the next industry leaders to help the economy of Nevada.
That's incredible. And Richard, my friend, thank you so much for joining us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Richard Terrell. He is the current CEO and founder of Design Oriented, a company that that focuses on game design. How you doing today, Richard? Oh boy. You good? Oh boy. I think we lost them.
Technical difficulties.
This has been happening all day. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Oh wait, you might be back. There he goes.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. Yep.
Cool.
Now we can.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Definitely.
Not you good. It's awesome to have each of you guys here on this panel. Richard, we're going over your guys' everyone's elevator pitch about what their company does. Why don't you tell us what your company's elevator pitch is?
Yeah, Design Oriented started off as a community, but really we're a company that focuses on game design education, and that's kind of a broad category. So game design can touch a lot of different disciplines, and we do have a lot of interdisciplinary resources and mentors and talent here in the community. So we teach game design, we make games, and we kind of find the intersection of how community, game design, and games education work together.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I actually caught a bit of that actually on your guys' stream the other day. You guys do some really incredible stuff there. And really, really awesome to have you here. So now that we kind of know who you guys are and what your guys' companies do, let's jump into the meat of things. What is the most essential, tangible thing that you need before you start on your journey as a startup owner? What is that one essential thing? John, why don't you go first, since you kind of went first last time?
The one essential thing.
Yes, the one essential tangible thing. So whether that's money, or having the necessary skills, or even having a building. What's tangible that people can sort of touch or feel, or what is that one specific thing or the most essential thing potentially?
Yeah, well, I don't think there is a one essential thing, but if you're going to hold a gun to my head, I guess curiosity is what I would say, because building a company is a continuous learning process. First of all, whatever you thought you were going to build initially, like, you might do that. That happens sometimes. Like once in a while, you actually build the thing you originally intended to build. But most of the time, it's a journey of discovery. And a lot of failures happen because you're not willing to discover and you're not willing to open yourself up to what you're learning along the way. So, you know, you have to have curiosity about the market, curiosity about people. You have to be receptive to all this stuff. And I think if you can treat it as a learning process, then that's really powerful.
That's awesome. Jeremy, what else? What do you think is the most tangible, essential thing to have?
That was a great one, John. I completely agree. If I were to add on there, I think grit is incredibly important, because what will happen is probably 95% of things you do are going to be a failure. So your ability to persevere through that and to use that as a learning opportunity is really essential. Because what could happen is it could knock you off your feet. And, you know, if you can't endure that kind of failure, you also have to be a leader for the rest of your organization that kind of reflects, you know, your state of mind. And yeah, so that's my addition there.
That's awesome. Milo, David, Richard, you guys, what else? What else do you need before you start?
They said the main. I was going to say perseverance and grit. I mean, I think we all know that, you know, being able to handle rejection and no, and, you know, all the failures and to sort of overcome that. That's you know, you have to do it, but until you start doing it, you don't sort of understand, you know, exactly what that means. But since you took that one, I'll do something a little bit more tangible. Is really, you know, you rarely, I think, at least for me, I don't, but, you know, you need a team. I mean, you need someone besides yourself to help you. And it's, you know, at the beginning, it could be one person, it could be 4 people, 5 people, but, you know, I think it's very difficult to do it alone. So I would say at the beginning, you know, once you have that need, that idea, especially if you're not technical, you need somebody technical to, you know, on your team to actually implement that idea.
And to me, the most essential, tangible thing, aside from perseverance, resilience, heavy emphasis on resilience, because again, we don't have to do this. We don't have to put ourselves through failure. But when it comes to tangibility, I feel like, because I was going to say a team that believes in you, but I think there's one step there's one thing that has to be there before you get a team, and that's you need a mentor. Because a lot of us don't know what we're doing at first. We have an idea, but, you know, I can speak for myself. I didn't know anything about business. But once I got the mentor, it was much easier to identify what a good team was. It was much easier to identify a direction to go in. So,
And to kind of wrap up, all the good ones were said, definitely. And they're all various shades of talking about creating an ideal learning environment. You're going to fail, so treating that properly, learning to learn from it, having a team, having a mentor that leads you while you leading the team, all that's very important. So the last thing I'll just throw on top is having a vision. It's kind of connected to all those, right? You have to have a purpose for doing this. It's not a hobby. It's not like you wake up and go, maybe today I'll try a startup. That sounds like a good idea. Like, no, you're usually driven by something, and that something comes from an experience in life. Like, you really want this to exist. You really think you can do a good job here or there or help people in this way, and that helps a lot.
All right, so we hear about all these wonderful things that you supposedly need before you start up a startup. Maybe a follow-up question then: do you need to have all of these things at the beginning, or can you learn these things as you go, or can you get these things as you go? I know that there are mentorship programs potentially for startups. You know, startup incubators, actually, right? Is what they're called. So do you need to have all of this all at once? Or do you need to have this all figured out before you start up, or can you learn it as you go?
If I were to chime in, I think it's kind of like the same analogy when it comes to parenting. You can read as many books and get as much advice as you want, but once you have that kid, it is all that stuff goes out the window because experience and real life and all the variables that come into play end up manifesting that you respond to. So starting a business has very similar qualities where there are millions of variables and factors that come into play that are going to affect your business. It's like the people, it's the market, it's the technology, it's the legal environment around it. So it's almost impossible to know everything that goes in there. So you have to assume some level of risk and some level of opaqueness in what's going to happen. And, you just got to believe and do the work and see what happens. And then you have to respond to what you put out into the market and how the consumers and how the market reacts to you. So it's almost impossible to predict. And I'm still learning too. Like I have no idea what's going to happen in the next year. So we're gonna find out.
Yeah, I don't think there's any straight line, or equation or anything like that. I really like the parenting analogy. As a father of a young kid, it's true. It's very similar in a way type of experience in the sense that once you commit to it, there's just sort of you have to have this forward momentum basically that drives it, and you in the startup sense. And parenting, it's a little different, but as long as you have that forward momentum that you keep everything going, and again, it sort of ties back to perseverance. There's no formula. It just is what it is. And you add all of these things as you go along, and it doesn't have to be in any certain order. I'm sure, I'd love to hear from John, who, has had multiple companies before. For me, I'm a first-time founder. So, what I'm doing right now is just sort of what I think is the right thing to do at any given time without the benefit of experience. But I think, when you have the experience of multiple exits, you have a lot more wisdom, and, you're able to approach it in a different way, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Experience is a two-edged sword in that you gain certain wisdom about certain things, and you also absorb certain patterns that you believe to be true about the world that are going to repeat themselves, that are not always true. So I don't know if Facebook would exist if Mark Zuckerberg had been told by everybody that, he was literally told, hey, we tried Friendster. Does anybody even remember what Friendster is? There was a social network called Friendster.
I remember
this. Yeah, okay. So Friendster, it for a while it had millions of people on it, which millions isn't even a big number at this point for social products. But it flamed out, and people didn't really understand why Facebook was going to be different. If he had listened to that, he wouldn't have made Facebook. So experience is a two-edged sword. Where can it help? I think actually experience is a lot less helpful than you'd think about the specifics of markets and technologies and trends and how they change, because what tastes are changes and evolves over time. I think it may be more helpful with things like people and relationships and understanding how to work with individuals. Like I made a lot of mistakes in my early career about how to work with people, things I regret, frankly. And you learn those kind of things through experience, like what works with people, what incentivizes people, what gets them excited about a vision. Those things, I think, are good things to learn from experiences. That's why you see, venture capitalists come along and want to put the gray hairs in place in sort of the executive positions when a company is starting to scale. Not early when it's started about the idea, but later when it's really taking off. That's when you see VCs sort of pushing for that, because a lot of growing an organization is about people. Entrepreneurship, here's sort of my biggest take on entrepreneurship. What's the difference between being an entrepreneur and inventing something? So you can invent stuff. You could write a book. You could invent stuff. That's like the purely creative endeavor. But entrepreneurship is creativity with people. It's about, which I think, David, you were talking about the idea of a team. Like before you can even get to the team, you have to have certain things before you even can get to that point, because you got to get a team excited about what you're going to do. But ultimately, entrepreneurship is about scaling up a business using an organization of humans, right? And the creativity is going to come from the culture, how you work with people, how you tap into all the talents that people have to offer to help you build something much, much larger than what you could have ever built yourself. And you asked sort of like, you know, my experience. I'm happy to talk about any of them, but I've just been very fortunate that I've been able to work with really great teams that were inspired by by a vision that I was able to bring, or in some cases when I wasn't smart enough to have the right vision, they tolerated me and stuck with me anyway, and we sort of figured it out as we went. I've been lucky to work with great teams, and after curiosity, I agree. Having the right team in place and having the right people in the right roles, and if you haven't chosen the right people, make changes, because you know that's a hard part of business as well. Like just making sure that you've got a team that gels together. But it's a learn. But you know, always bring curiosity, always bring learning.
Milo, Richard, do you guys have anything to add before we move on?
I was just going to add that there's kind of a pitfall there when you feel like even though you have some areas that are deficient, some skills that you know you need, that the tendency is to just throw a lot of effort into it and try to learn everything that you need right when you need it. There's a limit to how much you can do that. And obviously you don't have the experience, and you don't have sort of the having that knowledge mix and mingle with everything else that you do if you're just trying to learn it on the spot. Like John was saying, that's why team members are great. They can fill in those gaps for you. And when you learn how to work with them, when you learn how to rely on them, you're building a super you, like a super person as a team. And that's incredibly important.
And as for me, there's only one quote that really comes to mind. And that's from Richard Branson, who said, "If someone offers you an amazing opportunity, but you're not sure how to do it, say yes and learn how to do it as you're going along." And that, I feel like, is the core essence of entrepreneurship, because you can only know so much until, you know, you have to apply it. You know, another quote is, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face." That's pretty much entrepreneurship.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing to keep in mind. Like most entrepreneurial companies are going to fail, so you have to enjoy the adventure of what you're doing. I hope everyone here succeeds. I hope everyone here listening succeeds at what they're doing. But succeeding in that is not necessarily the most important thing. Like the most important thing is probably what are you going to take away back into that in your life, because your life is more important than a business that you're running. So like, what are you going to take from that that's important for you? Because the business, you may go on to a different business which is successful and this one isn't. Maybe you have to try 5 times before something is successful. Maybe it'll never be successful, right? So grit and determination is important if you want to keep getting more kind of shots on goal. And I think there's an aspect of that to be successful in business. Just get the shots. But maybe it won't work out. And that's not, and just to keep in mind that like, that's not the worst thing in the world either. The worst thing in the world is never trying and never taking the shot and never being part of the game in the first place.
I agree with that completely. It's like I can apply all of that, what you guys are saying, to basically yourself as a person. If you yourself are a startup, you know, and you just kind of learn everything as you go, right? Give or take. Yeah, something like that as well.
Can I ask a question going back to the teams, especially given the crazy times we're living through? What do you guys think in terms of building teams, especially building teams through people that you didn't necessarily know before, and the difficulty that COVID, working remotely and not necessarily being able to see people, in person, how much more difficult does that sort of thing become? And, have you guys figured out ways to overcome that?
I can take a stab at that. With my community, design oriented, we started slowly gathering together from when I was writing my blog and teaching myself game design as I went along. And that just started with comments at the bottom of an article. And then, Google Hangouts, we would chat on there, and that kind of evolved into all the next technology that came along. So from the very beginning, a lot of who I work with still to this day just started from internet conversations. And I know that the younger generation are more and more used to doing this kind of thing, and I'm somewhere in the middle. But I learned how to have better relationships with people over the internet and remotely, and how to check in on them and how to supplement some of the things that would be so easy to get in real life, like looking at them when they're working across the room or listening to how they talk and things like that, and finding other ways to probe and be like, how are you doing? What do you think of this project? What's going on? And it's a different skill set. It's one that doesn't come naturally. You have to learn it by being on the internet, but it's one that I find that because we built that to the core of our current community, design oriented, that it makes a big difference. You learn how to trust people and what things you need to do to verify that trust relationship is working. And it's not the same things that I would use in real life.
Yeah, to add on to what Richard's saying about trust, I think that is it's essential to any kind of healthy team. And one of the challenges by literally only being on Zoom or Google Meet all the time is it makes it harder to build relationships and trust. And so you kind of have to intentionally go out of your way to make sure that there are some cultural elements that help bring people together. And it's tricky because you also have to consider that this is an incredible strain on our psyche to, where 70-80% of communication is actually nonverbal. So when you're stuck only on phone and video, your mind is constantly trying to interpret those signals. So it's really exhausting by the end of the day. And there are a lot of studies that have indicated this. So even giving the space and time for people to, feel comfortable, to feel safe in an open and free environment, you have to really set the stage for that. So, some of the concrete things that we do are, generally just the first 5 minutes of the meeting is all just like chit chat, get to humanize each other versus all like, do this, do that. So let's get this done. So you can humanize ourselves. Sometimes it's tough. Like if you're the only one on video and everyone's just a profile picture, you have no idea what's going on. It's what are you thinking? Like, are you guys angry at me? So we're also doing Friday happy hours now, and it's so much fun that we just decided to stream it and just open up and be transparent about stuff that we're doing. So it's this interesting experiment. On the flip side, the pros are we've been able to ramp up and bring in talent from all over the world, and you get this extremely diverse range of perspectives, which enhances a lot of our creativity. So yeah, there's a lot of different elements here. It's pros and cons.
Yeah, that's actually a really great way to put it. I'm very much used to interacting with people over a virtual space, and I know for a lot of people that was a hard change to make, especially when COVID hit. But that being said, so Richard, I have a question for you, right? Would you agree that experiences shape your motivation as an entrepreneur?
Through a lot of experiences, because learning is such a big part of it, as we were saying before. Whether you're an entrepreneur or just studying a craft, I hope that you're being shaped day to day from what you're learning. I hope that every day you're putting in the effort to try something, make mistakes, fail. Neurologically, we learn so much by embracing errors and kind of trying things and failing over and over, and then resting and then coming back to it, that I hope every day you are kind of physically and literally changing by adding these neurons and having these experiences. So even though the main direction of your company and how you work may be the same, ultimately in the same direction, course corrections, I do that all the time. Everybody's different and every day presents different challenges.
Mm-hmm. Mel, what do you guys think of that? I was kind of leading into where did we find the motivation? Where did you guys find the motivation to, or the reason why you guys started up your guys' startups? But Do you guys also agree with that, or do you guys kind of agree with what Richard was saying? Is that a hard question? Good questions, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much for me to add. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
I think
yeah,
we all agree.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, we're all on the same page. Where did you guys find your guys' motivation? Your guys' reasons why you guys started your guys' startup? How difficult was it? And why is having the right motivator so important to have when you're starting on this journey?
I mean, I feel like if you need motivation to be an entrepreneur, you may need to reevaluate whether. Well, let me reframe that. If you need a special source of motivation, like if it's not sort of intrinsic to you and it's just not, you don't already have this burning passion to go and solve a particular kind of problem or engage in a certain kind of creativity, you're not going to find it at a sufficient level that you are going to turn into a successful entrepreneur. You're not going to just find it out there. So it's possible that you love the idea of being an entrepreneur more than actually being an entrepreneur. That's one possibility. Another is that you, in fact, are a highly creative person, and entrepreneurship is going to be the creative canvas upon which you paint your creativity. But you haven't found the actual subject matter yet that is actually the right thing for you. So, I think you're going to know it when you get to it, because you're going to be waking up in the morning thinking about it, and you're going to be going to bed at night thinking about it, and you're going to be waking up in the middle of the night thinking about some facet of it, and you're going to feel like you are on this earth to solve that particular problem because it's really important to you. So that's the motivation. Like, you don't need to go to a motivation seminar to find it. Like, if you need to do that, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'd say it's less about motivation and more about obsession. Is maybe like, one word that sort of summarizes what John is talking about in terms of, I mean, you're constantly thinking about what you're doing. It's what you live and breathe. So it's not that you need that motivation necessarily. It's already there.
And sometimes, motivation finds you because there can be external, experiences in your life that really change your worldview or, what's important to you. In my specific scenario, I decided to, leave my job at Blizzard and start the organization during the pandemic. Very worried about the state of society. I have 2 young kids, and I'm thinking about what climate change is going to do to their future. And my mom had passed away during that time period, and it made me self-reflect and just say, what am I doing with my life and my energy? And am I putting it in the right direction? So sometimes there's these moments that trigger this sense of responsibility. I think different things in life will influence your decision-making. And then the question is, okay, you've got that push. Do you have the grit to survive this process? And you'll find out whether you have you got what it takes. And even if you do, you can still fail because something else outside of your control will impact you. So it's a big gamble. That could be motivation as well.
Milo, Richard, either?
Personally, I've been in esports for 16 years now, and that's more than half of my life because I started when I was 10 years old. When I was given the opportunity to basically start a universe or collegiate esports with Riot back in 2012, that put me in a leadership position for a significant part of my formative years, and it defined my collegiate experience. Now, also being in Las Vegas, everyone was coming essentially to 8-bit, the UNLV side, trying to figure out how we managed to gain so many members and how we managed to be so successful. And when I was given opportunities to actually work under people like Caesars and get paid for basically what I was doing with 8-Bit for free, I realized that I don't like the oversight because I felt like I had more knowledge than them. And because I needed their permission, it was actually stunting the growth. So when I left, and my mantra was basically, look, I've been doing this like myself with my team with relative success. I'm just going to keep doing it my way. And if anyone wants to collaborate, we will welcome them. But right now, my main motivation is, if not me and my team, who's going to listen to the community and and their best interests first, and execute it in a way that essentially makes them trust that this can get bigger. So that's my biggest motivation. And I know, especially, the conversation that you and I have, Nick, where I just say, like, I'm burnt out, I'm not motivated. I really actually mean I'm uninspired, because, like, I'm still in this and I'm still going to be in it, but you need to take that break because you have to stay innovative. So it's not that I'm not motivated, it's just I'm uninspired more often than not right now.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is the motivation may largely stay the same, but I get specific examples of it. So, like, trying to work on a curriculum to teach game design and really wanting people to enjoy games and make good games and all that. A lot of times my focus is on the language and the curriculum and the structure there, but every now and then you get to work directly with people, and then you get to have those personal experiences and see where they struggle and where they succeed, and you realize, like, yes, there's a big, broad industry and a large audience for this kind of thing, but my motivation is colored by these individuals that I meet day to day and at conventions and things like that, the network of people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because it seems like a lot of your guys' motivations are definitely either, for the people that is, the people that you guys serve, or they're just, honestly, it's just bigger than life, right? It just seems like it's that thing that is floating above us all, that we're all trying to reach towards almost, right? I think that being able to trying to harness that, trying to like John was saying, you have to want it, right? You have to just wake up and you're not going to find the motivation elsewhere. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But that being said, so motivation in and of itself means survival, right? And survival in our industry means adapting and overcoming. Pivot is a magical word that a lot of people hear but don't necessarily maybe either understand or maybe might miss like it doesn't have a solid meaning almost, right? So your companies have potentially or already have pivoted their approaches or or your guys's motivations, right? Or even your company directions even. Why were these changes necessary? Why was it necessary for you to pivot?
COVID is a big reason, I think. So a year ago, more than a year ago now, I always thought that the future of 8-Bit would be events, like live events, because that's what Vegas is known for. But with COVID, live events went away, which was unimaginable. So that's why I took a month trying to reflect and trying to figure out what we're going to do, because we can't run a live event. And that's when I realized that my collegiate teams were actually winning all of these online events, and they were making significant scholarships, basically. And that's when I realized I actually have a talent pool and an opportunity right now to essentially grow from just, being the best in one location to all the barriers right now of geographical location are gone. Let's just join every tournament and see how far we can get, and eventually become a professional team that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we got that. But then everyone kind of caught up. So then everyone wanted to start a team. So I'm like, okay, where do we go from here? And the answer to that right now, which is the current pivot that I'm on, is since 8-bit has seemed to have done everything under the sun when it comes to esports. Let's just teach people how to do it, because that's honestly what makes me most happy. Like constantly delivering value and empathy that way. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. That's why we had to pivot.
Mhm.
I mean, I can go. I think more generally, and from our point of view, as like pretty early, we're in beta. Like right now, we're at 3,000 users, something like that.
Mhm.
You know, early on when we're still in like the product development stage, like no users basically. You know, we're like trying to figure out what we're gonna do, what we're gonna make exactly. And you know, I think everybody's sort of been there, and sort of from a general sense, it's this series of experiments, and you honestly, you have no idea how it's going to turn out. You know, you have an idea. It's like, you know, what they teach you in elementary school or whatever, middle school, scientific method. You know, you try something, you see what happens, and you know, you draw conclusions for it, and you know, rinse and repeat. And so I think a lot of pivots come from that. Is, you know, it's almost like this, you know, divining rod where you're searching for user traction basically, and you're doing all sorts of things to like get that traction, and like it's not working here, it's not working here, and you know, and so you actually literally have to like change, you know, technically like the product in order to try to find that sweet spot. And you know, once you start seeing that you've made something that actually people want to use and they like, you know, you stay on that for a while and until, you know, your growth flattens out there at least, and try to push that as far as you go. And so for me, pivoting is all about sort of going back to what John said, is having that curiosity and flexibility and really humbleness. I would even say that, like, you know, you probably don't know what you're doing exactly. And so, you know, to you know, be very open-minded. If things aren't working out, there's no point in, you know, sticking to it. It doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you're pivoting every single day. You know, you really have to like give things a chance and really see if, you know, what is and isn't working. But, you know, I think once you do decide to pivot and go in a different direction, you also can't second guess. I think that's a real problem where you're like, oh, you know, but that's like sort of a decision-making sort of strategy. Like for me, it's like once a decision is made, like there's no going back. Like you can't like say, oh, should I have done this? Should I have done that? You know, everybody has to be on the same page with what you're doing at that moment when you do pivot. So to me, like from a general sense, that's what pivoting is more about. And that's how I approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Oh man, I so agree. Science is fantastic, so it just works. Yeah, it's mainly, you know, you have all these hypotheses and assumptions in your head, and you've got to get it out to your users. And you know, as grand and wonderful you think it's going to be, your user's going to tell you a very different story, and then you discover a lot. And sometimes some aggregate of discoveries is like, okay, we made a really bad hypothesis here. It's time to adjust. And that takes a lot of courage. It's a very scary moment to kind of let go of what you think is the best pathway and try something brand new. There's also the danger of pivot fatigue, where if you're doing it too many times, you can actually really stress out and burn out your team too. So you have to be very cognizant of that. And, you know, I think in our particular case with Leyline, you know, we made these hypotheses around, okay, crypto's exploding, blockchain's exploding, NFTs are exploding, gaming is exploding. Let's like mash them up together and see what's going to stick here, and then point it all towards doing social good. So it's just such a wide space, and that environment itself is evolving rapidly. So you can go in with an assumption, but the entire landscape may just change right around you. So you need to be incredibly agile. You need to be very aware of the outside environment, and also very self-aware around how you fit into that. So that's the very, you know, interesting dynamic in the world today, is that technology is moving so fast with AI, machine learning, with, you know, increasing computing power, broader internet and faster internet access. All these things make innovation happen, you know, at this exponential rate, or grow at this exponential rate. And at the same time, we're adding, billions of people to the internet over the next 5 years of satellite internet. So that's just more people coming in, creating and starting up. So it is incredibly challenging to be an entrepreneur these days because tons of innovation happening all over the place, 24/7. So yeah, you need to be ready to adapt and, be hyper aware of what's happening around you and, figure it out. So I don't have great advice there. It's tough.
Richard, John?
Yeah, sure.
I think pivoting is just a reflection of the fact that you don't know everything when you started, and you couldn't know everything because, chaos theory, complexity theory, trends are going to emerge. Things that were unpredictable when you started are going to emerge, and that's your response to the change. Now, you mentioned, Jeremy, the idea of pivot fatigue. I think there's a point at which constant pivoting is just a random walk, I suppose. But I think it just comes down to the team and having the right team in place. And sometimes when you go to a pivot, actually the original team isn't the team to go through with the pivot to the other side of that. And part of the job of being a founder of a company or a CEO is assessing your team and their ability to adapt. And frankly, sometimes that adaptation is, do they have the willingness to go on to that next stage of the business? Maybe they don't. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people, but they're just not the right people to take you to the next place you need to go. So yeah, it's just sort of an observation of reality and responding to reality. And sometimes it isn't because you failed. It's because you also identified a bigger opportunity. Like, I was in a game business where we were building games. We had built some very successful games. Star Trek Timeline sold over $100 million. It was a good game. But I felt a passion for taking everything that I had learned and almost a selfishness if I were to keep it to myself within just building one game after another, when I could take the knowledge and the technology we created to a world of millions of game developers and thousands of game studios. And I felt like I was uniquely qualified to do that since I had built software companies outside of gaming as well. So I felt like I had to do that. And the pivot was driven by the size of the opportunity and the calling to go and do that versus what I had already been doing. So I don't think you need to look at pivot as a failure. I think you can also look at it as seeing the greater possibility space and going after that.
And Richard, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was exactly the kind of thing I was thinking about saying. You'll learn a lot, and if you don't know a lot going in, then hopefully it makes sense that every new major thing you learn should reevaluate. You should reevaluate what you know, where you were aiming, why you were doing it, and course correct. So, like, design oriented, we started off more in the realm of monetizing games writing with like blogging back when blogging was dying. So you pivot, and then we tried some other websites, some other services, some other ideas as we continue to learn more about how difficult it is to teach game design, and also who's interested and what kinds of things they need. So as the more we learned about our audience, the more the whole company and the direction we were taking began to change and pivot.
I think you guys explained it really well. You guys definitely defined what pivoting kind of really means and how that leads into my next question, actually. Because pivoting, that's adapting. And we talked about adapting, we talked about innovation fatigue, we've talked about this change for survival. Why is it so hard to innovate? What is the secret to innovating even? And why does it matter? And is there a way to hack innovation, or do you just have to stick your nose to the grindstone and just try and figure something out, Or
I don't think there's one answer to that. I mean, I think you can find a company like Roblox, for example, where the founder started it with this user-generated content idea and enabling people to create games online. People told him he was completely insane for a decade. A few people didn't and backed him financially. He survived through the period when everyone said that UGC was dead and just forget it all. It's a waste of time. Okay, so now he has a $50 billion company. So that's an example of just being totally stubborn and sticking with the vision and seeing it to the other side. That's a way to be an entrepreneur, and I think it's been successful. There's another view of the world which is almost completely opposite of that, like the lean startup, view of the world, which is, put stuff out there rapidly, iterate quickly. If you don't get market feedback that gives you the information you need to continue, then abandon it and move on to something else. Keep iterating. I don't know if lean startup would have produced a Roblox and the $50 billion of wealth that has been generated so far from that company. Maybe it would. I actually don't know enough about it. I'd love to talk to the founder someday and have him educate me as to like getting through that. Versus, Twitter is like the opposite of that. Like Twitter, they were doing something completely else. Like they literally did what we just talked about. He was doing something else, wasn't really working, wasn't getting a lot of traction. They built Twitter over a weekend or something, and they're like, hey, this is a pretty cool idea. What do you think of this? Okay, so there's another 50 billion. I don't know what their market cap is. I didn't check today. 50 billion-ish market cap company that was born out of very rapid iteration and recognition of they had been working on something else that they were ready to just throw the towel in on and give something else a go.
And Nick, you had asked why innovation is hard. There are a number of factors involved there, and one is that in order to innovate, you have to take a lot of risk. And often larger organizations tend to be a bit risk averse. So you end up seeing a lot of cultures where, hey, we want to mitigate risk, we want to put these processes in place, and it actually constrains creativity. And the other element about creativity, like the root behind it, is an intermingling and exchange of ideas. So you need to bring in this, nice, diverse range of perspectives and talent onto teams so that those ideas can kind of bounce around and form themselves. So a lot of it is how do you cultivate that right environment so those ideas can exchange, and then there's some safety and freedom to express things that could, be total junk, but maybe it triggers that one, process in someone else's brain that leads to the aha moment. I think it's the organizations that find the most innovation are the ones that create those environments to cultivate it. But even then, it's kind of like rolling the dice. You have no idea when that eureka moment's going to come, and it can come from any angle. So you're just more trying to optimize for the probability of that to occur.
Yeah, I would say, it goes back to teams as well. I think that there's some people that are just really talented and they're better at innovating and just they have that skill. Like analogy to sports, like some people are Michael Jordan and they can, they can just do it, and some people can't. I mean, I agree with the sort of the cultural aspect as well to, cultivate that within an organization. But, if you have, a team member with superpowers like that, then you're going to be able to innovate. But I think sort of the broader point and what John was bringing up, which is an amazing point, is that innovation isn't enough for success. I mean, I think it goes back more to perseverance. You have this innovative product that just means it's different and nobody understands it. And, you really have to persevere with it, and going the other way, maybe it's not so innovative, and you're iterating, but again, it comes back to persevering and just to pushing it into market, and to, keep going with it and overcoming all of the challenges. I think, that's what we started with. And to me, that's what I end up with all the time is it's the perseverance more than anything.
Yeah. I mean, in innovation, all that means is that you're making new stuff. It's easy to make new stuff. Do customers want it? Can you scale it?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's important. I watched a speech by Elon Musk about a year ago when he was giving the annual report, and he said, to succeed in this business, you have to have the best technology and the best product. I was like, oh, thanks. Now I understand what you're supposed to do.
Speak a little bit to innovation. I think with the direction ecology and kind of neurological studies are trending, we're demystifying a lot of ways that we used to think about learning and how people work. One example of that is that creativity is more of a practice than it is an inherent quality in people. So you can teach creativity, and even though you still need the diversity, you still need to know your craft, reach out to different sources, synthesize different ideas. You can practice being creative and generating new ideas and kind of seeing where that goes. So with innovation, it's very similar. Just like John said, you can make new stuff and you can get better at just putting combinations together that nobody has seen, but there's so much more to it. And when you add on the additional challenge of innovating to solve a problem, innovating in a way that people actually want your product, that's when it gets really tricky.
Yeah, and to riff off of that a little bit too, there's like a couple of phases there too, where there's the brainstorming and the ideation, and you can come up with tons of creative ideas and have like thousands of things on the table. So then the challenge is discernment and good judgment. How do you choose those ideas that have the most potential value? And then you have to execute. And that's the second phase, which is how do you actually build a thing and make sure you're organizing your team to help achieve that new idea. So getting that like through that life cycle is a very, very challenging process, and where I think a lot of organizations have trouble getting through. So it's that's, there's so many barriers to innovation, but the goal is to try to break them down piece by piece as much as possible.
And essentially, innovation, I feel like, is just the means to stay relevant and the means to upgrade yourself. Like, you don't have to go so far away from your initial product, and you also don't have to be innovative yourself. You just need to add on features that customers want. So it could also be very feedback driven. One thing that is very controversial, whether or not that was successful, was fleets on Twitter. Everyone called it out for being Instagram or Snapchat stories, and people were very adverse to it, but it was marketing for them, and Twitter learned from it. I don't know if fleets still exist. I think they do. But yeah, in the end, innovation is a way to stay relevant. Pivoting is a way to survive.
I like that. I actually like that. That seems like a very accurate descriptor kind of both pivoting and of innovation. But Jeremy, I actually want to go back to something that you said. You're talking about risk, right? And I think that's a very slightly dangerous word, because we in whole companies and big companies, they even have people that are literally called risk managers, right? What is the right approach to risk, right? It's both. It's dangerous. It's unstable. It potentially might cost you a lot of money. It might cost you very little money. It might make you a ton of money. It might sink your business. What is the right approach to risk?
I'm not sure if there is one right approach, but I think key elements in your strategy on addressing risk have to be good discernment, analysis, and really just hard prioritization. So, the first thing you do is you want to identify what's the range of risks that are on the table. And it could be infinite, so you have to now filter that down. What are the things that are going to have the biggest impact on the business or the organization? And what's the timeliness or the probability of that happening? So you kind of have to go through this analysis exercise to know these are the things that could hit us hard in the face. these are things we want to start to prevent, or these are things we're going to just accept. Maybe something's going to happen there, but we have to just decide that we're not going to spend $1 million to try and address that one potential flaw. So there's a lot of judgment needed and decision making before you even step into addressing the risk or mitigating it or transferring it. So yeah, there's a whole practice around it. And you can absolutely get caught in analysis paralysis just by looking at every possible risk. So sometimes you just have to say, we're just going to go and find out if this thing, blows up or not. Because the alternative is just you do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a few thoughts on risk, and my teacher on this is Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who wrote a book called Anti-Fragile that I recommend, as well as a few other books. Black Swan is maybe the one he's best known for. So a few things. Number one, you have to align risk with reward and even downside. So there has to be skin in the game. Right. So people who are going to take risks with your business need to be aligned to that risk. So you as the entrepreneur have ultimate risk and reward. If the business blows up and you made a decision that made it blow up, guess what? You own it, and that's your right to do that. But someone who works for you, who doesn't have nearly that much skin in the game, you want to give them a space maybe where they can take a certain kind of risks, but you can't give that person the risk to blow up your whole business. They don't have the skin in the game for that. So I think number one tool to think about is just what is the skin in the game, and is the level of risk being given, the risk being granted to someone in an organization proportionate to the rewards and really what's appropriate for that. Another is that there's sort of different levels of risk, and it is possible to qualify them based on what is the risk of ruin, essentially, right? So, for example, it is unethical for any one of us to invent a technology that has a risk of ruin to the world, right? So if one of us had a great idea for making money, but the risk was that it would destroy life on the earth, we wouldn't do that. Right? You shouldn't do that. So you can kind of back from that into various spheres, right? So what is the risk of ruin to your community? What is the risk of ruin to your company for making certain decisions? What's the risk of ruin to a project? So in a company with multiple projects, maybe it's acceptable for you to take a high risk of ruin on a project and say, listen, if that project doesn't work out, no worries. We'll take everybody who is working on that. Job well done. You tried it. You took a big swing. We'll have you work on something else after the fact. The company will survive. Sometimes that project is tantamount to the ruin of the entire company, and you'll have to decide whether that's acceptable to you. So if you're an entrepreneur and you own everything, you can make that decision for yourself. If you're an entrepreneur with other co-owners, partners, investors, you'll have to decide whether that's a risk you want to expose them to and whether you think that's fair. So risk of ruin and skin in the game, those are the two tools you can apply towards risk analysis.
Richard, Milo?
I think that covered everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one thing I'll say is that sometimes people think of risk as something that you opt into, like, oh, should I take a risk? Can I take a risk? But in my mind, you're always at risk, right? The world is either moving away from you and you're moving with it, or something is bound to enter the equation that changes things. So staying still is also a type of motion. Therefore, it kind of gives me a little bit more confidence to continue to move in the direction that I think will produce better results.
I agree with all of that. That makes a lot of sense, especially especially talking about really the survival of a company, or potentially even the way that you mitigate the risk in order to ensure the survival of a given company. But that being particularly said, so let's go. I'm going to go back to something that David said. And John, you founded several companies, and we have, you have had multiple exits involving taking a company public, getting acquired. What are those processes like? And why did you decide to exit and stay in a startup lifestyle by starting over again with new ventures? What motivates you to continue doing this sort of thing over and over again?
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks for that. I mean, not everything has been a great outcome. I've been very lucky that some have been a good outcome for everybody involved. Some haven't. Some, my experiences have ranged from unmitigated train wreck to, people making 10 times their money. I mean, after the one that made me 10 times my money, or in my investors that kind of return, which was going public, I tried retiring for a while. It wasn't for me. Like I don't regret it. Like I played a lot of video games. I did a lot of scuba diving. I traveled around the world. That was a lot of fun. I never want to retire again. Like I'm now of the mindset, by the way, that which I think is a healthy one to adopt, which is we're going into an exponential future of abundance, and none of us knows what's in store for each of us individually. But one of the things that I think is part of the possibility space is that people, all of us here right now on this call, there's the possibility space that life is going to last a lot longer than what it has in the past. We might be healthier a lot longer into that life than has existed in the past. So for me, almost the worst case scenario would be like retire and stop moving and enter a stasis as the rest of the world keeps going and going. And then I'm in this state of almost an undeath in this world in which I'm not doing things. So I did do a lot of fun stuff, and I wasn't in a state of undeath while I was scuba diving. It was a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. Like worse things could have happened to me than doing that. Like it was great. But I'm a creator ultimately, and my canvas is building companies. And that's, to me, is a lot of fun. I love working with people. I love talented people. I love the conversations that you have in business where you work on hard problems and try to figure it out. So like, that's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. And I'm on my 5th startup. I've got 5 more startups in me. Easy.
That's actually pretty awesome. But actually talking about exiting and, coming out and going on to new things, we actually have a number of people here, specifically Jeremy, David, and I believe Richard as well, right? You guys pivoted your guys' careers from whatever it was that you guys are doing into becoming startup owners. What was it like actually, going from whatever it was that you were doing before the startup to owning the startup and owning all of this that is happening right now that you are responsible for?
Who wants to? I can go first, I guess. For me, it was sort of like the startup was initially like a side gig from a day job. And it just became the main thing, and I quit the day job. It just sort of, it goes back to sort of like that obsession idea. It slowly, at least for me, it's something that slowly, it was like a slow inevitability, I guess. It didn't happen, immediately. There was actually, to be honest, COVID is the thing that sort of was the tipping point when that started, and sort of life sort of went topsy-turvy and things like that. But that's really what triggered it. But it was sort of a slow burn, sort of going in that direction regardless. That was my personal experience, at least.
I'll just throw out some descriptors, I think, of, frightening, exciting, anxiety driving, painful, euphoric, soul crushing, soul shredding, and then there's like a bit of like peace and serenity like mixed in there. So that's kind of the feelings that I've experienced so far. And
that's just the life of a startup. That's the roller coaster ride of startup. It's like all of the feelings, plus about 50 more probably.
Yeah.
Those are pretty good ones.
Go ahead, John.
All those things are true. I don't want to take anything away from what you just said, because I felt those same things, but I also try to just bring a sense of gratitude to it, because I'm so grateful that I get to do what I got to do, what I get to do every day, because I could be in a war zone. I could be starving. Like, I could be a lot of people in this world. And I was very lucky that I was born who I was, where I was, got to do what I did. Like, there's a lot of luck in what we're all doing here, running businesses, and even the chance to get to do it. Like, it's an amazing thing to get to do in our lives. And just I just try to remind myself that, like, wow, like, the fact that I get to do this is pretty awesome.
I would agree with that in the sense that, sort of in the time for me, it hasn't been that long, maybe like, a year and a half officially. What I've learned in terms of like gratitude, what I've learned, during this time, in startup, like, dwarfs pretty much everything I learned, and sort of the breadth of knowledge and understanding that, a regular 9 to 5 sort of brought. I mean, that had its own benefits as well, but, despite the pain of startup, I totally agree. It's there's nothing like it in terms of sort of understanding yourself, understanding, things that you never even thought about yourself, frankly. So I agree on the gratitude point.
Yeah. And, I'll say that freedom and autonomy and your ability to, carve your sense of purpose, I don't think I could ever go back to, the corporate world again, because it is very liberating and empowering. So, yeah, I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, along the same lines, having a multidisciplinary background and in every craft, in every field, just slowly inching your way towards understanding, towards mastery, and always being on that edge between, okay, I'm comfortable with what I know, but I see so much ahead of me, so I'm going to keep my head down and keep working. I feel like that's very similar to what it's like running a startup. The reason why you got there in the first place is because you've learned some things, you've gotten help, and that's all like a very familiar learned process. You have those memories, you have those experiences, and I look ahead and I say, like, okay, don't get too comfortable, because every day it's going to be these hurdles. You're going to be knocked down a little bit. You're going to have to learn a little bit, and I've learned to live with this balance, this equilibrium. You can tell that when times are hard, you're like, oh, I could just fall apart at any moment. Like John was saying, I'm very grateful for so many things, even at this stage, for me, have worked out in the community that I have and the opportunities that I've gotten. So yeah, that keeps me afloat.
Milo, I have one question for you.
What's up?
You said 16 years ago, right? To the date. Did you ever think that you're going to be doing this? That you're going to be a CEO of a startup in esports 16 years ago?
No, and that's the beautiful thing about it. I just love what I'm doing. And you have to love it to put yourself through this much pain. Entrepreneurship is not a glamorous lifestyle. Like, there are pictures of Gary Vaynerchuk like sleeping on the airport floor, because that's the life. There's a TED Talk that I really, really like, where a guy actually goes over what it's like being an entrepreneur, and he starts the TED Talk with pulling out his phone and the projector behind him showing Facebook, and he updates his status going, about to do my TED Talk, #killing it. And he's like, no, that's not the life. We just idolize this for social media. But 99% of the time, we're masochistic, like, going through this. But that's just because we believe in what we're doing and we enjoy the autonomy. And furthermore, and I guess this is mostly for me, I enjoy delivering value.
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? You have to love it. I think that none of you guys would be here talking about entrepreneurship, talking about what it takes to start a startup if you guys didn't love to do it. Heck, I think if you didn't love it, John would have only started up one startup and then gotten out. Right?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I think it's more nuanced than that. I don't think you love it all the time, right? And have any of you read Ben Horowitz, The Hard Thing About Hard Things? So you all have to read that book after this, because that's his stories of, startup life. Of course, now he's known for being like uber powerful venture capitalist with billions of dollars, but his road to being an entrepreneur had a lot of problems along the way, a lot of mistakes, and laying off big groups of people, pivoting through multiple versions of the company and different financings and all kinds of crazy shit. But I would definitely recommend reading that. The reality of the startup life is it's not always I said some of these things myself in this conversation about like always have curiosity and enjoy the journey. All that stuff is true. So I don't want to like contradict myself as much as I contain multitudes. I want to just say that, this shit's hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. There's a lot of reward to doing it well. The rewards are kind of astronomical wealth creation for those who can pull it off. And the astronomical wealth creation doesn't happen for everybody. So, it is really hard, and you just have to be prepared for that. I think there's a certain nobility in that adventure that is so hard, and that you may not succeed, probably won't succeed is the reality of it. Probably won't succeed, I think, is the thing that you need to recognize going into it. And that's okay, right? Like, so when we talk about, like, I think it's also important to look at the thing that you're doing is that is not the totality of who you are as a human being. That is not your dignity as a human being. Like, you are more than any of these businesses that you're going to create. The business might be awesome or it might not, but you are more than that. And don't totally connect all your self-value to what you're going to do through your entrepreneurship. That said, go for it. Take a big swing. See if you can do it. Take a lot of swings. Do what I've done if you want, and do it over and over again. But you are more than this business, and don't suffer to the point that like you're hating life, because there can also be a lot of joy in it. But the joy is in moments that are separated far apart for the most part.
I think that's well put. That really is well put. Guys, we have made it through just about over an hour into this panel, and this has been a phenomenal panel to have you guys all talking at. Let's finish off this panel with the last question here. Final pieces of advice for folks watching that are wishing to start up their own studio or their own company, their own esports team. Richard, let's start with you first.
We've said a lot of the tips and tricks, getting a mentor, having some passion, having a vision, all those things. So I guess the final piece of advice, if you're on the cusp of entering this world or not, I think there is some good to letting it come to you, right? There are life circumstances around you. There are opportunities around you. There are people around you that can really help you get a better sense of where you are, what you can do, and how you can help, what kind of products you can make, how you fit into the world. Because ultimately, being an entrepreneur, you have to fit into the world somehow, and hopefully they pay you for it, right? That kind of a thing. So yeah, just listening to your immediate circle and being open and honest, that's a good starting point.
Nice. Milo, David, John, Jeremy?
You don't have to be a well-rounded person to be a CEO. You have to triple down on your strengths and find people that can cover your weaknesses, because you shouldn't be doing it all. your main role should be steering the company and motivating and guiding. So don't waste time. If, like, for instance, me, I hate writing emails. I enjoy talking. So I found a guy that enjoys writing emails, that can sit down and do the business or write out the business plan, write out the proposals, because that's agonizing to me. And that's how I stop myself from burning out. I'm just always doing what I know that I'm strong in, because that's what's best for the company.
Yeah, I'll share a piece of advice, which is always consider your leverage as well. And one of the biggest things that a leader in an organization can do is just to be a good connector and to make sure that you're combining the right people, skill sets, and setting up the right chemistry. But even outside of that, your organization should have connections and partnerships with other organizations too, because even your organization's strengths and weaknesses could have great complementary partnerships with others. So there's always this position of you don't necessarily have to do it yourself. It's just activating the right people or partners to create some mutual benefit. So there's a lot of importance of being able to build those social relationships and earn that trust.
Yeah. We've said it all, I think, in the panel already. This has, by the way, been really enjoyable. It's almost like a CEO support group. It's been nice. But I would just summarize what we've basically already said is, if you're considering doing this, whatever you think the experience is going to be, it's going to be nothing like it. And, you really have to steel yourself to that and to really understand that it's going to be difficult, and it's only going to work. And as John said, it might not even work and probably won't work. But if it does work, it's primarily because of your will and because of your perseverance. And so you have to really know that part of you is sort of there and set to sort of take that next step.
Mm-hmm. And then, John, any closing remarks?
I think that guidance, motivation, sure, that's all part of the job description, I guess, but you have a lot less control than I think you would like, particularly as you grow. You actually have less and less control as you grow. And it's not about being El Presidente and telling everybody what to do and how to do it. It's about picking the right people. And Ben asked a question in the Q&A a while back, like, how do you find the right members of your team early on? I mean, I think that's sort of the essence. That's actually the right question to ask, which is, how do you get the right people into the organization? Because that's really what the CEO's job is. The CEO's number one job is to get the right people in the right jobs of that organization. And if you can do that, your job is actually super easy, right? Like all you have to do then is just like keep finding the more people when certain kinds of things open up in the organization, or you have to observe that someone isn't quite working out and you have to swap them out. That's, if you can just get that one job right, a CEO, I think everything else can kind of take care of itself. How do you find the right members of your team early on? Find people with a similar value system to you, because you're not going to work well with people that believe in fundamentally different things. If they think about money in a different way than you, if they think about loyalty in a different way than you, if they think about honesty in a different way than you, if they think about evidence and experimentation, if they have different fundamental tastes, like if you're in a game business like I have been, if they have like different tastes of like what's even good, like it's hard to reconcile those things. You're not going to get along that great. But like if you find people of a similar value system and they happen to be really, really great at the jobs that need to get done at that time in the business, then a lot of things will take care of themselves through pivots and changes and mistakes and a lot of problems that will happen, because there will be problems. Business is problem solving. Like understand that. Like a business exists to solve a problem that exists somewhere, and in the path to solving that problem, you're also going to deal with a lot of problems inside your business as well.
Just to clarify, so when I said closing remarks, I meant so that that we could begin the Q&A session. But thank you, John.
Oh, okay.
We're good. We have until
I solved the problem of escorting us into
we have until 3:35, if anything, for Q&A. So no, we're definitely on track. This has been a phenomenal panel, and I sincerely hope that to all of our viewers who are here throughout the entirety of this panel, these wonderful people are accessible to each of you guys through you guys' social media. We can drop that right before we end Q&A. But yeah, no. Do you guys have anything else to add about that? Finding the right members for your guys' team early on? Jeremy, I know that your team is absolutely phenomenal. I've worked with them. Milo, yours as well. Richard, yours is incredible. And I know David, you've been kind of recruiting for yours, but I know you found a little bit of success with that as well. So what say you guys?
Well, I think John speaks very well to all those key elements. I think what I've learned, and I think where we were quite fortunate, is we really focused a lot on our values and our mission and why. And the more we really focused on that is what actually attracted the right talent to come join us. And sometimes in an organization that's tough if you don't have a good message or a good value system that's just very outward facing. So recruitment can be a very big challenge. But I do see that this day and age, most people that are in this particular market are looking for organizations that are more than just, hey, it's a salary and it's like something stable. They're looking for meaning and purpose and alignment of what they care about. So I think to help the talent attraction, being very, very transparent about who you are, your DNA, and what you stand for can help find the right matches for your team. Otherwise, I think I was just fortunate. Again, like coming back to the whole connector statement, as you go through life and your career, building those relationships and building that trust and, cultivating and maintaining those relationships is really powerful because, you are helping others and taking care of them. And eventually when time comes, you might need to ask like, hey, I'm looking for an engineer. Do you know anybody? And they connect you to other people who connect you to other people, and then they find the right talent. So in large part, just having a very wide network benefits a lot in that talent search. But yeah, I'll stop rambling.
I mean, David, Richard, Milo, you guys have anything to add to this question?
Hey, I mentioned it before. It echoes what was just said.
Yeah.
My team grew out of the community, and the community that I have rallied around the mission that came first. So just kind of people floating around the internet, they found the blog, they could hear my voice, they could who I am and what I was about was communicated up front, and then we started these relationships. So taking on projects and building up the team out of that community solved that first problem automatically. And then there's that inverse problem of, yes, we're all rallying together, but we're missing key pieces of talent. So that was the flip side of the problem. That's the hard part for us in particular.
For us at an early stage, it's an ongoing issue. We have our core team, people I've known, my whole life almost. A lot of what we've done, especially with volunteer side, is similar to what Richard has talked about. Because we're so, our company and our product is so enmeshed with gamer communities and Discord itself. A lot of our team members were users, essentially, and beta testers that essentially joined the team because they love the product. And so, that's always a great thing. But I agree with Richard that it only sort of takes you so far. You still need to fill in, key skill sets. And, it's an ongoing challenge, that we'll be addressing.
For me, It was actually one of the more defining parts of my life. So in 2012, my brother and I actually co-founded like our esports organization on campus. And when we got, our pool of friends together to become leaders of this organization, he got us into a meeting and he said, "Look, this is going to take a lot of time. This is going to take a lot of patience and a lot of learning. I can't pay you, but what I can do is provide the opportunity to learn and refine your skills and the opportunity to grow past this." So if you take that viewpoint and then apply it to a bootstrap startup where you really can't pay anyone, it you tend to surround yourself with the people that truly believe in the vision and the goals of your company. And when you align that, yeah, like roles are going to change and people kind of have to be well-rounded because you do have a bunch of scarce resources when you're starting up. But yeah, as long as they're willing and to learn, continue to improve, and they're there because they believe in the vision, those are the people that you generally want to surround yourself with. Of course, they also have to be skilled. You can't take anyone that isn't skilled. Like, I believe in your vision. What can you do for me? Or what can I do for you? Like, nothing. Thanks, though.
Yeah, no, that's weirdly harmonistic to sort of the experiences. Funny enough, David mentions how he just sort of finds team members out of his community of beta testers and just people that sort of are in his community. Yeah, I feel like that harmonizes with my experiences as well. Like, right? Like, that just seems the way it happens. The people that are most invested in your community also have probably the most vested interest in your guys' product, right? But is it hard to kind of tell, who has talent and who has the capacity to develop that talent when you're like recruiting these team members, or like is there a way to hack that, or?
There are ways to potentially minimize the risk of not being a fit, but frankly, there are too many variables at play. And the ultimate decider is once they're in and working and integrating with the team and trying to feel themselves out. So many things could happen where a potential new hire doesn't really fit in. So most of it is really accepting the risk and then doing the best you can to allow that person to effectively join the team and be a contributor. So there are actually studies around this where the whole interview process is kind of just like flipping a coin, because as good a person might be in that interview, they may hit the team and totally not get along with the leads. Those things can absolutely happen. Or you bring in someone that's high talent, a perfect fit, but they end up getting mismanaged and don't fit. So there's more to just the interview process. That's just the very beginning.
So number one, I think talent is a little bit overrated. I think that culture fit is underrated. If someone is not a culture fit in my company, I don't want them there anymore. If someone doesn't quite have the exact talent that I thought they were hiring them for, but they're a great talent, they're a great culture fit, I'll try to figure out how they can stay in the organization. There's ways to, so I'd say number one, while interviewing, at least the way I've done it is I highly prioritize culture fit. How do you assess culture fit so that you don't know the people, so that you don't experience people just telling you things that you want to hear or that they saw on your website where you listed your culture values out? Behavioral interviewing techniques. So these are skills that you just develop by doing it a lot. But behavioral interviewing techniques means, throw out all the stupid questions about like why are manhole covers round and all this useless shit that people throw into interviews, like the puzzler kind of questions are a total waste of everyone's time. Instead, focus on like, what have you done in this situation? Tell me about did X that relates to the culture value that I care about, and have them actually tell you a life experience. Don't give them hypotheticals to solve for, because they'll solve the hypothetical the way you want to hear that hypothetical solved. It's a lot harder barring a patently dishonest person, to just manufacture things from their life experience that are true stories that are relevant to what you care about. So ask about actual behaviors that they've had in the past and how that relates to what you want to bring into your company. And yes, it's not a perfect tool. You'll make hiring mistakes, in which case you just got to solve that quickly. The faster the better. Once I've decided to fire someone, by the way, I've never felt like waiting ended up being a good idea. It's always been better to just move on that fast. But while you're hiring, you can de-risk it through culture fit and behavioral interviewing techniques.
Do you guys have, Milo, Richard, David, do you guys have any final thoughts on this before we close this out? No. All right. No. Guys, it's been a wonderful conversation. This has been an incredible panel. This is absolutely 100% awesome. I need a preface to all of our late viewers. If you guys missed the entire panel, this has been recorded, so it will go up on YouTube at some point. But before you guys all leave, why don't you guys link your guys' social media, your guys' company pages, right here in the chat. Maybe talk a little bit about it while you guys do that. Jeremy, why don't you go first?
Well, you could find us, probably best is on Twitter and Discord. So you can find us Twitter, Leyline NP for nonprofit. And I'll post up our Discord link here too. So come on, hang out. Otherwise, you can just sign up at leyline.gg. We're in alpha and just opened up our waitlist. So you can pop on in. Check us out.
Richard?
Cool. Yeah, Design Oriented is a company that's doing lots of interesting things. We have small projects and bigger projects that we work on, and we really do try to find the best fit for the different diverse talents we have in. But the community is there for everybody. We talk about game design, we teach game design, and we do a lot on education. So if that's anything that you're leaning towards, just come along. The website's there. It has all the links you need.
That's awesome. David?
Yeah, you can find us at www.betty.gg. It has our socials there, and you can pop into our Discord server, which is really enmeshed with our product. And you can find, basically, once you go into our Discord server, you can find all the partners that we work with that use our platform to run no hassle automated tournaments.
Mm-hmm. John?
Beamable is a platform that's going to help you take your game idea and turn it into a business. But I think more broadly speaking, we're part of a movement towards a creator economy in which it's about individuals and small teams and diverse teams and people anywhere all over the world to take that creativity and make a living from it. And we would invite you to come join our Discord server, be there, hang out with us. Whether or not you're going to use our product right now, it doesn't really matter. We come on the journey with us and be part of the movement.
And last but not least, Milo, my friend.
You can find me at twitter.com/KoyoMilo. I would plug 8-bit, but right now, because there's so much infrastructural and confidential movements within Vegas, 8-bit really isn't doing much right now because we're just laying the foundation. But if you want to just hang out with our community, it's discord.gg/8bitesports.
All right, and guys, my name has been Nicholas Espinoza. I've been your panel moderator for this panel here. You guys are all wonderful people. A special thanks to all of you guys here. Thank you so much for saying yes to the EGD and to everything that we do here. Guys, it's been fun. And now, time to go on to the next one, right? All right, on to the next adventure. Thanks, guys.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.